Hi, welcome to this week's practice. Today I'm going to lead you through a yin yoga practice, and we're going to mostly focus on the hip area, but we also aim to get the spine all released. Let's get started. For this week's practice, a few pillows or cushions or maybe a bolster would be really handy props. Or if you have blankets that you can roll, make them into kind of soft cushions, then that would be really handy. So some kind of soft props are useful in this week's practice as we go through our yin practice. And to get started, we're going to come lie down on the back. So take a bit of time to get yourself comfortable. If you're in a cold room, have a blanket to cover your body so you don't feel cold as we go through the practice. And we're going to start with a couple of minutes in some sort of Savasana pose. So come lie down on the back, and you could extend your legs. You could leave your knees bent, maybe have the knees leaning against each other. You could also already here bring some cushions, maybe a bolster under the legs if you want. So that for a couple of minutes you can find a restful pose. You could bring hands onto your belly. Or you could have your hands and arms resting next to your sides on the mat. And if it feels comfortable, you could close your eyes. Just let yourself turn your awareness inwards. Noticing your breath. Maybe feeling your breath, maybe hearing your own breath. We just let our thoughts quiet down. We're not trying to empty our mind. Thoughts will come in, but also let them go. Practice being present in the moment. Not worrying about the past, not worrying about what's going to happen next. Allowing yourself to stay in this moment, just focusing on how you feel. And if any of the poses I'm suggesting today don't feel right in your body today, then let yourself find your own variation, or maybe choose a completely different pose. This is your practice. And this is your time to look after yourself. Give yourself a few more breaths in this resting pose, just observing the natural flow of your breath, not forcing it to be any slower or any deeper than what feels easy right now. And then after your few breaths, we're going to slowly move into a reclining butterfly pose. So we're not going to go far. Slowly start to bend your knees, bringing the soles of the feet onto the mat. And then slowly start to open your hips, turning knees out to the sides. And this is where you could bring a bolster or some cushions under your knees, under your thighs. Just opening your legs into a soft butterfly shape. The soles of the feet turn towards each other, but they don't need to touch. There could be even a big gap between the feet. Make sure there's no pain in your back, there's no pain in the hips. You can always adjust to have more support or less support under the legs. And using props is always your choice. If you want, you might open arms further out to the sides or even bring arms overhead. And that might invite some sensations in the upper body as well. And once you've found your shape, come back to your breath. Allow exhalations to soften tension, soften effort. We're not here to hold the pose. We're here to let the body rest in the pose. Sometimes there might be intense sensations. Try to find an edge where you can still invite softness and release into your body. Now, if you notice that the pose is asking you to tense up, then take a step back. Maybe find an easier, softer edge in that pose. The shape is different to all of us, so focus on the sensations, not what the pose looks like. We could stay in this reclining butterfly pose for another 5 to 10 breaths. But if you start to feel that it's been long enough, you are welcome to come out of the pose. You might adjust your pose. If the pose feels manageable, take those another 5 to 10 calm breaths in and out. And towards the end of those breaths, if you have arms higher up, you could slowly slide the arms back down, closer to your hips, closer to your sides. And you could bring hands to the outer edges of your thighs and just slowly, slowly help your legs back closer together. If you want, you might hug your knees in towards the chest. Just notice how your body feels now after that reclining butterfly pose. And from where you are, just bring your feet back down onto the mat. And reach for your props. We're going to come into a reclining dragon pose. And a couple of pillows or a bolster would be a good prop for this. We're going to press the feet down and elevate the pelvis, the back off the mat, so that you can slide your bolster or maybe 1 or 2 pillows, cushions under the pelvis. Just to elevate the pelvis, the lower back off the mat.
And take a moment to find a place where you can then release the pelvis, the lower back on top of that support. Again, without holding yourself. And the intention of in this next pose is to open through the front line. And we're going to first bring the left knee towards the chest, towards the belly. Not pulling it in too much, just a gentle hug. And then you can either stay here, if this feels enough for today, or slowly start to extend the right leg, sliding the heel along the mat. And that might create a stronger sensation at the front of the right thigh or hip. You can adjust where the right foot is. It could be about in line with your right hip, or you might slide your right foot closer to the center line. Or you might slide your right foot further out to the side. And that might have an effect on how the pose feels like. Make sure there's no pain again in your back. There's no pain in your hips. And at any point, if the pose starts to be too much, you can always bring that left foot down onto the mat. And again, that might change how the pose feels like. So let yourself adjust the pose. The intention is to open through the front line. And come back to your breath. Allow your jaw to soften. Allow your neck to soften. Allow your shoulders to soften. Allowing yourself to find softness in areas where tension is not needed right now. And let your mind follow the flow of your breath. We'll have another 5 to 10 breaths in this reclining dragon pose. And as you arrive towards the end of your 5 to 10 breaths, if you're holding your left knee, just slowly let your left foot come down onto the mat. Bend your right knee so you have both knees on the mat. Take a breath or two in and out. And then we'll slowly find our way to the other side. So on this side, we would hug the right knee in. And maybe this is a good edge to stay on. You don't have to go any further. You'll have the option to slowly extend the left leg again. You can play with where the left foot is in relation to your pelvis. Is it closer to the middle line? Or is it maybe further out on the side of the mat? And the second side might be very different. That's very okay, very normal. We are often quite asymmetrical. So keep on focusing what the pose feels like. Don't force the shape to be the same on the two sides. And again, you have the option of bringing your right foot onto the mat if hugging the knee in doesn't feel right for you. If you're holding that right knee, let your arms and shoulders soften as much as possible. We are needing some effort there. But find softness as much as is possible right now. And that softness can find its way in through your breath as well. Just allowing ease in your breath, observing the natural flow. We'll have about 5 to 10 more breaths on this second side of the dragon. If you feel that you'd rather come out of the pose earlier, that's very fine. Don't force yourself to be any longer than what feels good for you today. And again, after your 5 to 10 breaths, or when you feel that you'd be ready to come out of the pose, start by releasing the right foot down if you've been hugging the knee. And then slowly bend the left knee so you have both feet on the mat. And you could gently swing the knees, swing the legs from side to side, giving a bit of sideways movement, but keeping it soft, keeping it gentle. And you don't have to move if that doesn't feel right for you now. And then from here, we're going to go into one more pose with the support under the pelvis. Supported happy baby, or some of you might want to go into the snail pose. We'll start by bringing knees to the belly. So I'm suggesting to keep the bolster, keep the pillows under the pelvis, but as we go into the pose, if it doesn't feel right for you, you can always move those props aside. This is your choice, your pose. From hugging the knees, you could slowly open the knees, kind of out to the sides towards the armpits. And you could reach hands for the feet or ankles or hold the backs of the thighs. And this could be your happy baby. You could stay here. If you want, You could start to open the angle in the knees slightly, so you're turning the soles of the feet up towards the ceiling. You can have a more traditional happy baby shape, or you might extend your legs even further. We're looking for some gentle rounding in the spine, maybe some opening through the backs of the hips, backs of the legs. And if you are familiar with the snail pose, you want to try a different shape, you could continue from that happy baby by bringing the legs a bit closer together and then continuing to bring the legs overhead so that your toes reach towards the mat on the other side of the head. Hands could still support the feet or legs, or hands could support your back. You could also pull your pillows, bolsters closer to your back so you could lean onto your upper back. So if you are going for the snail, don't push the weight onto your neck, but leave the weight onto your upper back between the shoulder blades. And if you've chosen to be in the snail, make sure that you can still breathe. So again, not pushing the weight onto your neck so that you start to block your throat, just sending the weight more onto the upper back. And remember, you have that happy baby as the other option, so don't force the snail. And from either of the poses, you can come down earlier, or you might spend another 5 to 10 breaths in your chosen pose. Just gently opening through the back side of the body. You could send your breaths towards that back side, allowing exhalations to soften, releasing effort. If you are in a snail, I would suggest to slowly start to roll the pelvis back onto your pillows, onto your bolster. And then also from happy baby, slowly start to bend the knees, close the hips, so you come back to hugging the knees in. Back to where we started from. And then one leg at a time, release your feet back onto the mat. Again, you might rock a bit from side to side. And then slowly lift the pelvis up so that you can then slide your bolster, your pillows away from under your pelvis, under your back. And here you can do slightly bigger windshield wipers, swinging the legs from side to side. And from those windshield wipers, slowly let your knees lean to the right side of the mat. And here as well, you could bring a pillow, bolster under your legs. So finding a reclining twist. Legs could be wider apart, or you could bring your legs on top of each other. You can also use a bolster, a pillow between the legs. And now let your arms relax. We've had several poses where the arms have been needed as a support. Now let your hands, your arms fully relax. You could turn your head to one side or the other. And again, allow your shoulders to soften. Your neck, your jaw to soften. Inviting that awareness back to your breath, back to that internal environment. We'll have another 5 to 10 breaths in this twist. If you feel that you need to release a pose earlier, again, you are more than welcome to do that. And then at the end of your 5 to 10 breaths, or when you feel ready, slowly, you could close the chest gently and then roll on to your back, releasing any props that you need to release. Coming back to center. And then slowly find your way in that twist on the other side. Let your knees fall to the left side of the mat again. You might bring props under the legs, between the legs, even on top of the legs. Finding a soft edge. Finding a place where you feel you could release the arms. Again, you don't need to hold the pose. Start from a gentle edge. As we stay longer, the pose slowly sinks deeper. The sensations might become more intense. There's time. So start from that gentle edge. We have another 5 to 10 breaths on the second side of the twist. You can stay here, or you might come out of the pose earlier. And towards the end of those 5 to 10 breaths, and you could slowly first close the chest and then roll on to your back, giving yourself a moment to move if needed. And then maybe finding some support under the legs, under the knees, as we slide into our final resting pose, finding the final Savasana pose. Once more, bring your awareness back to your breath, back to that flow. Just allowing yourself to rest here for the next 5 minutes, rebounding from the practice. I'm going to leave you here to rest. Thank you for joining in. Namaste.